we are. You can go ahead and mute. Mute and hide your video. Hi. I think I'm live. You guys already know what day it is today. We're feeling positive. We already have a vibe going in the back end. So before we came on live here, you see my guest is here and she is ready, pretty in pink, honey. She is ready. Dr. Threet is here and I'm super excited to have her on our show today. Hi, how's everybody doing? I am Queen Educator and I am the CEO and lead consultant of Everybody Educate, and we are hosting Brilliance on a Monday, honey, with brilliant educators. This month, we have been highlighting Black history theme, Black resistance. And so you have seen that it's the status quo. We are looking for people, and we are talking about people in history and now who resist the status quo so that we can have better lives, so that we can leave better legacies for our children. And so here at Everybody Educate, we believe that everybody's educating somebody somewhere, and we got to do it right. So everybody educate. It is a call to action. It is a call to action. So when you're on here, and if you are on here and you're that educator and you really want to be the best educator that you can be, and you want to have those winning classrooms, this is the place to be to learn how to really do that. And today we're going to tell you the secret to having a winning classroom. And here I have my guest today here to tell you all about that. So we need you to pause before I get her on here a little bit. She's about to say a little bit of something to you all and just welcome herself and introduce herself. I need you to like, comment, and share if you're on the replay. If you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay. Don't forget, if you are watching the replay, to share it as well. We are excited to be here. Can you guys give it up for Dr. Rhonda Threet? Come on, somebody.
What is going on? So good to be here. Thank you for having me, Queen.
Absolutely. We're so glad you're here. So I want, first of all, I just want to let the people know who you are. Like, just who is Rhonda Threet, Dr. Rhonda Threet? Who are you? What do you like? What are you passionate about? Give us a little something.
You want to know who I be? Who I be?
Yeah.
We like to say, we do this work in our district, Beyond Diversity, and we like to say who we be. Because we're beings, right? We're human beings. And I would have to say I be a mom. First and foremost, I be a child of God, right? I need to say that first and foremost. But I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm all of those things. And obviously, I'm here today, I'm an educator. I'm a Black educator. And what I also am, or I be, is, I guess, and I love that, resistance to the status quo. I'm out here in the streets, Queen, like you, just really trying to, change the status quo in education. We know there needs to be a lot of change that happens across probably every wheelhouse, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, the criminal justice, but my passion is in education and just how we teach, right? Just, that's who I be. I was about to go on, but yeah, that's who I be.
Well, thank you for that. And we're so glad that you be who you are, because there's not a lot of people who choose to be themselves. One of the biggest beliefs and standards that I have in my life, and people who are connected to me and I'm connected to them, is to ensure that we are authentic. I am not going to be anybody else but me. And so talk to me a little bit about how you came to have this passion for changing the status quo. Like, where'd that come from?
So I think for me is, and I think you were a part of, I think this is like the time I first met you. I guess it might have been like 15 years ago, right? Because before I knew, was it like 15 years ago?
Girl, oh my gosh, I think so.
I don't know. It's been a minute.
It's been a long time.
Right. But before I really knew that there was like a problem with education, but because I was able to matriculate and navigate, where you go? And I was able to, and I was able to, I guess I'll use the word navigate the educational system. And so once being in it, I mean, things are kind of like need to be changed, but I guess for me, I didn't really understand the full, as far as the systemic nature of what needed to be changed, and when I'm saying systemic, I'm gonna just be flat out the systemic racism, that might be in a lot of policies and in public education. And so I think it was probably about 15 years ago when I started to do work with, I mentioned Beyond Diversity with Pacific Education Group, who brings that to our district. And my first course there, I say this, just to be truthful, and I showed up. For one, I didn't really know, even though I heard the word diversity, I didn't really know what to expect. But then when I was there and I was like, well, at least, we finally got a training for these white folks, is what my first thought was. And so it wasn't until I started to really shape my own, then through this dialogue, we had interracial dialogue, and I started to shape my own thinking around what it means to be a racial being. Because again, I took the status quo as, well, that's just how it is, and that's how it's going to be, and not for like, it needs to be changed, not, and that's I didn't have that mindset. But when I start realizing, for one, how I was also perpetuating the status quo, like I was a part of the problem. So it no longer became like, oh, this is what these white people need. It was more about, this is what I need. Like, I need this because I have consumed let's just call it for what it is, the smog of racism. I consumed those ideologies, and so there were things that I was doing in my own classroom that was like, it was the most, in terms of even as a Black educator. So when I started to do the work on me, I started to see as a Black educator, oh, like there's work that I need to do to change the status quo, or understand what needs to be changed, right? And so I think that's really where my passion began. It really began there. And I remember I had what'd you say?
I said you were a teacher at that time?
I was
teaching first grade, right?
I was, and Dr. Nelson, who was a relentless principal for the work, she even was one that seemed was like, you're passionate about this. And there was a training opportunity with Pacific Education to lead that session. And I just continued to engage in the work with the organization, with the educational group, and we do courageous conversations, and I continue. But the thing of it is talk about authentic. For me, it was really about it. What was liberating is because there were norms that we were able to do that I needed, like speak your truth, because there were so many places that my truth as a Black educator wasn't welcomed. Right, especially in education, like it's like, and I heard colleagues today even say this, like, I'm not going, and it was Black educators to say, actually it was a counselor say, I'm not speaking my truth because I don't want to get fired. And it's a shame that we can't speak our truth. I mean, and that's what I'm resistant. Like I had to have the tools to be able to speak my truth. So that was liberating for me. So there were a lot of different things that like supported, igniting the fire and it being my passion and just knowing. And then I used to start seeing the changes that need to happen. So, like at work, I always say it's that self-work, but then, and that's just been my journey and I'm still on it. So, but that's where my passion came from.
Wow, Dr. Threet. So listen, I'm going to go back a little bit. First of all, thank you for sharing about your passion and reminding me that 15 years ago is when we met. Oh my God. And we were really like just excited teachers, right? Trying to really do what was best for kids. And we started to realize, are we really doing what's best for kids? And is everybody else we need to make sure that they're doing right by children. But then what you helped me to when we were working together was to
Because I
think
was like
about
a teacher coach. I was
yes,
hybrid, part in a classroom and part I coach teachers.
exactly. So let me situate a few things for you guys. Sorry, we just jump right in. We get excited as soon as we start talking. Let me situate this for you. We met. I think I was teaching kindergarten. Dr. Threet was teaching first grade, but then she was also a teacher leader. So she had she would do. You talked to him a little bit about that, but she would teach halftime, and then she would coach and support teachers specifically around being culturally relevant, right? I feel like that's where I got a lot of training from under the leadership of Dr. Nelson. And it really transformed my teaching experience to the point where I remember it to this day and I embody it. And so like a lot of times I naturally think that people understand what it means to teach and be culturally responsive, culturally relevant. And it's not. And I have to remember as I'm working with new teachers and working with educators that sometimes one thing I learned about this work is that you have to be intentional. So guys, we met then, Pittsburgh Public Schools. We have Dr. Threet here. If you're just tuning in, hola, hello, please share and tell us where you're tuning in from. We have Dr. Threet, and we are talking to excellent educators who resist the status quo as we pay tribute to Black History Month for Black resistance being the theme. And in the chat, I see Shelly. Hi, Shelly. She says, I love the work Dr. Threet has done cultivating young minds and inspiring others. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're connected to this day because of a lot of the work that she chose to boldly go forward and do. And when you see somebody being bold and resisting the status quo, you're like, oh, I'm allowed to do that? Okay, I'm gonna do it too. And I feel like that was the impact that you had on me. And so I definitely had to have her on our show today because of that, for that very reason.
I was gonna say I was gonna say my sister can say all of that because Shelly's that's my sister. But I appreciate that. I will definitely take it. I take it,
Well, I think that your family your family does really know you well and know us best. And sometimes it's like we're in this work and we're doing so much and it becomes so common to, our family, our family members and to us. But when somebody on the outside, you're like, oh, wait, you see that I'm pushing through this, even though I'm getting backlash, even though this isn't popular. Like I need some reassurance. And so definitely you're definitely right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you just being honest and sharing that. So was there a teacher or an educator that really inspired you or continues to inspire you? One of the other, if you look at it another way too, was there a teacher that inspired you, but it was from a negative aspect where you're like, oh, wait a minute, to get into this work, to this profession as an educator?
Mm-hmm. It's funny you asked me that because I was just thinking about this a while ago, talk about 15 years ago, probably maybe, I don't know, same time frame. I did an article in Kidsburg and they asked me the same question. And my answer today is the same. Miss Burgess, Viola Burgess, right? She was a principal, but I met her before I was with the district for Pittsburgh Public School District for over 20 years. Like I met Miss Burgess even before I was with the district, because I was really running from teaching. Like seriously, I was running from, because I believe teaching is a calling, and I was really running from that calling because I was afraid, first of all. And I was afraid, what if I can't teach? What if I don't want to be responsible for a room full of uneducated children? Which is another reason why I'm passionate, because we shouldn't have an achievement gap. Like you call this brilliance, but our children, specifically our children of color, they are brilliant, right? And that's one thing I learned, that not only want to say I learned, but I know, maybe I learned it as well, is that you have to understand, despite of what society says about our Black and brown children, they are brilliant. And sometimes we'll hear more, we know, more negative than the positive. And teachers have to understand how to pull out that brilliance, because oftentimes, more often than not, some of our students, because again, what society tells them, they don't know their brilliance, and that's our job as educators, to remind our students of their brilliance. So it's funny that you call this Talking with Brilliance. Like I have to, sometimes you want to say, don't call me brilliant, but I have to accept that, because as I'm talking to as I'm embodying that, my brilliance, I also see that in my children, my students, of course, my biological children, but I'm talking about my students, who my biological children will also tell you that I call my students my children. So, but yeah, it's about understanding their brilliance, and knowing that it's there.
Absolutely, Dr. Threet. I really want to let's delve into that a little bit more, that brilliance piece, because I feel like we're afraid. Like the status quo was like, oh, don't talk too much and highly about yourself, and and don't, you're trying to get in, how do you think that affects our children when they're not able to even they're not seeing educators who are walking in their own brilliance? I'm just going to be honest. Because of something you said earlier. You said, oh, I don't want to, get in trouble. That is something that I constantly have faced. And I know many teachers and educators have faced. I don't want to get in trouble. And it actually blocks them from being just that brilliant educator. Just because they're sharing doesn't mean that they're trying to, harm, or, well, I'm talking about people's intentions. When you think about, there are people that do try to harm and aren't really have the best intentions, that really should not be teaching. And I say that very boldly all the time on here. This platform that I'm on here, and the people that I'm talking to, are those educators who know that they they have been called to be a brilliant educator, and to help bring better legacy in our world, in our education system. Those are the teachers and the educators that I'm talking to. Right. Those new educators who are excited, very excited about doing this work, and not afraid to talk about the hard things. And when something's wrong, speak up and say, no, this is damaging to our children. Absolutely. But how does that affect whenever you're in a system full of people, let me not get a knife in my back, or let me not, that's in our world. What is your take on that for our children, especially our children of color? I mean,
definitely no judgment. And I get it. Right. I definitely get, this is our livelihood, and in no profession. I think that's probably common. You don't want to be the one, because there's certain things that is a part of the culture, those tacit beliefs that if you say it, then there may be some type of taboo, then your position's cut or whatever. Yeah, you're always getting this shift, or there's things like that occur. But in terms of education, just because of the impact and the power, especially in what it means to educate specifically everybody, obviously, but I'm talking about specifically children of color, and just knowing the historical perspective of our Black and Brown children, how from a historical perspective, let's just be real, we were deprived, Black and Brown was deprived of education. So when I think about how my ancestors had to sneak or get whipped to read, if they were reading, and they would hide, and learn how to read. And now today, when you ask the question, what does it mean for someone to not, want to put themselves out there? While I get it, for me, and I can't, I'm not in anybody else's shoes, so I can't judge anybody else's decision. But for me, I don't have a choice but to show up and do this work and put myself in that, if it has to be in that place of discomfort, and resist the status quo. I don't have any other choice. I know the shoulders that I stand on in regards to that. And I know the fight that that my ancestors had to go through to be able to just be educated. So I know that I am, not going to not fight in that same manner. It may look different, but it's important. So I've put myself out there. There has been, and I know Glenn Singleton, who leads the work with Beyond Diversity, a session that I went to with that a while ago, someone said, I don't remember if it was him or not, that oftentimes when you are engaged in this work, there will be some backlash, so I don't know. I guess for me, I always say, like, my ministry right now isn't out here physically in these streets, but I'm in these streets in education, trying to do this work, getting in good trouble, as, John Lewis offered us. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for what you do. In the chat, someone shared that they loved your article. So let's go there. Because I think about the brilliance that we're talking about, and how can we make that a norm? How can we make it a norm that we walk in our brilliance and that we recognize the past? I love how you boldly speak about history. And then even before slavery and before we weren't able to do all these things, kings and queens as Black, and we were kings and queens.
Can we start there?
Like
right
literally.
there. Okay.
Literally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how are we teaching our children? How are we not perpetuating a system? And I'm always asking questions because I love coaching. I'm a coach, but like I challenge people to look at their situation and do what you can do with what you have and where the space that you're in. And that's all that you can do, right? And one of the things that I want us to realize is that we talk about Black history. We talk about, we talk about some of these terms, culturally relevance. We talk about cultural like diversity, but do we really know what it means and how and to embody it in a way that really doesn't just become jargon, like, oh yeah, this is what we do on Black History Month, or oh yes, this is how we put this in the strategic plan in the schools. We're just going to write it and say we did it. How about we really get real about this and actually understand what that looks like and do the work. And so an example of that, Dr. Threet, is something that you did. And so it looks like Dania, I'm hoping I'm saying your name right. She says she loved the article regarding the course you teach and your approach. So I'm going to share my screen, and I want people to see it, but I want you to walk us through how you go beyond just that jargon, those words that say, okay, yeah, Black History Month, or, oh yeah, hey, we need to do this in the classroom. And you actually do it, you model it, you teach it, you inspire the next generation of teachers to do it. And it is awesome. It is brilliant in itself. So we're starting at an advantage and not like, okay, this is just what we do. We always do, we always done, we always get what always get. And that's not something that you accept. You resist that. And we resist that.
I try.
Okay. So as I share my screen, talk to us a little bit about what's happening once you can see it here. And talk to us a little bit about like where you were. I noticed it says Point Park on here. Give us a little bit more detail about your work here.
Oh, yes. That was a wonderful experience and opportunity. Those students there, they really taught me a lot. So I taught this course, Family and Community Diversity at Point Park, and it's a required course for students. And it's an article. So my first time teaching this course, I teach at Point Park, but another course. And I was able to use what I was just mentioning, and I don't, hate to, not saying hate, but this is the work. There's a lot of frameworks. Let me just say this, side note. There's a lot of frameworks out here that will help you engage in interracial dialogue, critical dialogue, right? And because 15 years ago, have been introduced to it over 15 years ago. The framework that I use is in this book called Courageous Conversations about Race by Glenn Singleton. And that's his organization, Pacific Education Group, that worked with our district a while ago. And actually we still work with the with the organization. But I say that to say there's a lot of frameworks. The thing of it is to have that interracial dialogue, to have those tough, courageous conversations, you need a framework. So that's the one I use. So I say that because I know I kept mentioning things connected to that. But I actually use this book just because I know how impactful it was having that framework to engage in interracial dialogue. So I used that in a course. And I'm not gonna lie, I was skeptical, right? Because I'm like, I know that this is a predominantly white institution, PWI, and I'm gonna have predominantly white students. So I know I'm not gonna have as many students of color. And so I was like, I don't know. Like, so, and I really thought about it. And I'm like, again, I was like, I have to, because I really wanted students who were thinking about going into teaching, or they were in the career, the pathway to become a teacher, to engage in this work, to engage in this critical dialogue. Because for me, when you're talking about being culturally relevant, you have to, and that goes back to what I said earlier, you have to have this sense of understanding of your own racial conscious and and be a critical thinker in that way. And so I wanted to use this book to help students start that journey there. But again, I was a little skeptical, but the response to it was so impactful. I mean, and it's in that, in the way the students were engaging in this dialogue and having this awareness and this, awakening, of the consciousness was remarkable. And, there we did a service learning project. They did culturally relevant lessons, because I don't believe that it's very hard, let's say it like this, to be culturally relevant without knowing how to have that, again, reflective, critical lens. And so, again, that's why I wanted to engage in this dialogue and have these courageous conversations as we journeyed through the course. And it was, you can see that one white student just was, and she talks about it even now. I still keep in contact with a few, because we're starting now to do this social impact project that I received a grant from, and it was actually inspired by this course. So again, we want to just continue to do the work and see how, so I work with teachers in education with, being critically conscious. And I just mentioned, leading a seminar called Beyond Diversity. So why not start, before, when they're on their journey to becoming teachers, to really start and engage in this work. And I have a group who wants to continue to figure out what that looks like, so that's basically what that was about.
I love it. And thank you so much for sharing that. One thing I want to really highlight for everyone listening is how do you really engage in culturally relevant teaching and pedagogy if you really don't understand it? And you know it as a word to be used and you think it's one thing, but I love how you all, one thing you said about just like really understanding the framework. What does it really mean? Understanding myself. And then
racial being, as a racial being, right?
Exactly. And one of the teachers who, or one of the students, excuse me, I love this. I just wanted to read this. And you guys can see it right on the screen. I think having experiences like this so early in my career is so rewarding. So that's a testament to, your mindset, your resistance of the status quo to say, hey, hold on, let's get ahead of this. And we think about the next generation of teachers. Are they really well prepared? And here, Everybody Educate, that's exactly what we do. And we're excited to partner with you guys, with you and with Teach Plus on the grant as a result of, you just decided. And so trust yourself. Sometimes when we talk, Dr. Threet, you're like, I don't know if I should do this, but yes, because you have all this wealth of experience and knowledge, and these things that are flowing out of you are naturally flowing out to say, hey, it's time to shift and make sure that we are doing what is right by children and not just thinking about it and kind of complaining about it. Let's put some things in action to make sure, to be intentional, that our next group of teachers that are coming out, and with us and Everybody Educate, even the teachers who are right there right now, come on, let's start shifting our mindset right? And doing what we, not just what we know to do, but what we should do by getting the proper training and support to do it and do it with confidence. So thank you, Dr. Threet, for that. So to have this type of experience is rewarding, and the teachers become more comfortable, the students become more comfortable as teachers, right? When they walk into that space, and allows them to be able, her to be able to be impactful and have impactful experiences for those young minds. So I'm really excited, and she really appreciates that. So wanted to share that. One other thing I shared last time, Dr. Threet, before we close out with I have a couple more questions that I just want you to share with us. But was an article you wrote about Black History Month, and you did it last year, an op-ed, right? And I want you to just talk to us about that very briefly. I'll pull it up, and I want you all to go ahead, and if you haven't read that, please read it. Please read it. If I want you to read that, teacher that's listening right now, educator that's listening right now, because it's very powerful, and it is fitting that during Black History Month, I always have mixed feelings around like trying to hurry up and fit everything into a month. Whenever I was teaching in my classroom, I was like, no, Black history all year. But anyway, I want you to talk to us about where'd that come about for you, that article that's really taken a lot of people to have mind shifts now from reading that article.
That came from my soul, honey. It did. I mean, so like, I think over years as a teacher, and I subscribed to it too at one point, right? Because I was conditioned to do that. Like after we have a month to fit, I heard you just say, fit the wealth and the greatness and the brilliance of Black culture in a month. And we know that's just ridiculous. So again, when I even said there was so much, because how I was conditioned, as I, started out to say, I said that earlier, that that conditioning didn't allow me to see early in my teaching career that wasn't okay. So where that article came from was just not just from my own experience with schooling, but also just as an educator, seeing that. And again, like I said, being conditioned to think that that's how it had to be. But knowing that Black history is American history, and it should be taught throughout the year, very authentically. There's so much greatness. Like, we shouldn't have hidden figures that we didn't know about, right? And they made a movie, awesome, wonderful movie, but that should never be, right? We should know about the greatness that, Black people stand on, and their contribution to society. So we should definitely know that. So just seeing that, and like, there's a part in there in that article that just speaks about what I saw. And I still remember, honestly, a teacher across the hall from me the day after, I don't know if it was a leap year or not. If it was the 29th, or if it was March 1st, it was, I don't know when it was, but it was right at the, when Black History, quote unquote, month was over, ripped down King from her, because King was basically the only Black person in society that most people would teach about. I'm not saying all, right? Not absolute, but more often than not, Dr. King or Rosa Parks and things like that. So that was on the teacher's wall, or door, I should say. And when the day after she ripped it down, I just remember it just hit me. And I didn't say anything, and it's like, but I remember how that hit me, and how that it hit me in a way where it was just like, she was just hurrying up. I'm not saying she meant anything by ripping it down. And she was just hurrying up, trying to prepare for leave, as teachers do. But when it was replaced with a leprechaun, then I was just taken back of that imagery, right? And so of even, that action, and just what it reminded me of, and what came up for me. So I have tools now to have those conversations with people, just given a different perspective, not judgmental. Like, you could put what up, down, and what you want up or down in your classroom. But, for me, what came up was the students in her classroom, which she had predominantly students of color, you know, what they might see when they see somebody that looks like them, because this was a white teacher, and somebody who looks like them is down and now replaced with a cartoonish figure. You know, it was, to me too, was the replacement thing. I'm like, what message does that implicitly tell them and send them? And so that, I wish I had that conversation with that teacher, just as a perspective. And again, those don't always go good. I can have the best intentions, but what, again, it goes back to your question, what makes you, you know, lean into that resistance, that discomfort that comes from resisting what I see. And in this case, not having that conversation, to me, is more hurtful than, you know what I mean? Because even though she doesn't probably, I'm sure, I would assume, mean it to be ill intent, the impact, you know, we always talk about the impact versus the intent, and the impact of that was what it was worth me saying something, you know. So I just hate to live with I shoulda, coulda, woulda, especially on the backs of our students.
Love it.
That need those opportunities. Yeah, people.
Thank you so much for that. And there's a line that says, how can we reach a point where Black and brown students feel seen and affirmed in schools, not just during Black History Month, but all year long? And so if you are listening right now and you just tuned in, we are talking to Dr. Rhonda Threet, and she is one who embodies the journey of trying to make sure that she starts with herself, culturally relevant, culturally responsive, really being intentional about assuring that our students, Black and brown students, are affirmed, especially since we do not have, like, the status quo has not been that. And to interrupt is a word that I want to say, Dr. Threet. One of the words that I see that you've done over the last 15 years that I've known you consistently is to interrupt, because when you stay quiet, and when we stay quiet, we really do hurt our children in the long run. We hurt families in the long run. Just to stay face is not always good. Lack of knowledge, just because we didn't know it, that's not an excuse. And so thank you for your interruption throughout all these years. Continue to do so. And your interruption, even as on the college campus, when you are teaching your students in college, and when you were in the school district and you were working as a learning environment specialist. We didn't really go into a whole bunch there, but I know that you have a depth of, like, knowledge and work and expertise. And I want to just say thank you for interrupting the status quo, so that our children, all of our children, can feel affirmed, so that all of our children can be engaged, right, within a curriculum. I know we talk a little bit sometimes about the curriculum and how sometimes we have to supplement text and things into the curriculum, still going by the standards, but saying, hey, no, there's not enough representation even in our curriculum, or even in our school, of Black teachers. Why is that necessary? And when I'm asking you that question a lot, like with your mission, like, what are you doing now to impact others? And I know part of it is that representation piece is huge, but what's your mission right now?
Ooh, what's my mission right now?
Yes.
Well, I will say this, just because of the systemic nature of systemic racism, right? Mm-hmm. The systemic nature, how redundant that is. But no, because of that, I think I have a couple things that are my mission, because there's so many variables. Like, there's no technical solution for this work, right? So for me, I'm really, one of the things I'm focused on is, and I know you mentioned Teach Plus PA, is working with policies, right? And really helping to shape policies. And so I work with Teach Plus. You're in that fellowship. I'm a senior policy fellow with them. And we really get the opportunity to work with some brilliant teachers, talk about brilliant, some more brilliant teachers from across the state. And I will have to say, which is another part of my mission, is like finding those allies, because you said a lot of wonderful things about me just a while ago about, you know, my work with being culturally relevant and all of that stuff. And I appreciate it. But this ain't, you know, Dr. Rhonda Threet work, because it takes a village, you know what I mean? I can't do it alone. And so when it's finding, you know, people like you and, you know, white allies, you know, talk about historic history, you know, in our history, there were the white allies, you know, who helped even Underground Railroad, right? So where are the allies, and where's the coalition at? So it's the effect policy, continue to find allies, you know, to continue to find, and parents too, right? This is village work. I have to get a shout out to back in the day, I learned somebody, his name is Yuri Brofenbrenner. That dude talked about, so I'm gonna call him a dude, but he talked about, his work talked about how it takes the community, it takes all of these different systems, the educational system, the home life. It takes all of that to really support one child, right? One child. And so it's really finding the parental support, because we need that. We need the community support, you know, and obviously I work full-time in, you know, public education. So that's another part of my mission, is to help you know, do what I can for the organization that I'm in, but also on the outside with Teach Plus and working adjunct at the university, doing the similar things, trying to start there with students who are up and coming teachers and educators, and helping them with that, their journey to be a culturally relevant practitioners, you know, starting with that racial critically conscious self-work, right? And being able to engage in those type of dialogues and things like that with each other is something that I weave into all my courses at this point. So what is my mission? That my mission is about this work, right? And being up here in these streets, honey, right? Doing it.
Yes.
By any means necessary, right? And so I guess that's my mission. So it's really, again, I think I love your even at this hour before I came on, I was like, I'm so tired. And you know, I think I told you, I was like, Queen, I don't know what it's going to come out my mouth, but because this is my passion, and because I just love the fact that you were, you know, talking about resistance and changing the status quo, that I had to, even in my weariness, right? So even having these types of dialogues and conversations with you is part of my mission, you know, so that's my mission. That's my mission.
Thank you so much. And what's one maybe like message you want to like leave us with, or call to action or challenge that you would love to share with the person listening right now?
I guess my call of action would be I mentioned for teachers, whether it's parents, that we have enough resources among us to really strengthen. So, and I'm gonna just speak to education. Like, so if you're a parent of a school age child, I'm even public, I'm just even put more, you know, bounded a little bit more, like even public education. If you have a child, you know, work with, you know, first of all, I would tell this to students all the time when I would see them in the hallway and they, you know, say, I'm not going in the classrooms because, you know, they're not teaching. And, you know, make sure that your child is getting an education. Like, we need our children to be educated. And if your child doesn't like school, or, you know, I always say to the students, like, demand your teacher, like, not demand, be respectful, but ask your teacher to teach you, you know what I mean? And talk about, but position yourself to learn. So we have to work together with parents, right? We have to work together with educators. Educators know the brilliance of your students. And yes, all lives matter, definitely. But right now, because if I don't isolate and say Black and Brown specifically, sometimes it gets washed up. That's the whole, you know, it gets forgotten. So I'm gonna say specifically, your Black and Brown students, understand their brilliance. right? And understand what it means to teach the students. And I know it's hard, and we can't continue to blame or look to the next person or blame the system. The system is, yes, it's messed up. It is. It's designed to do exactly what it's doing. So it's really like we have the resources. I guess I'm saying my call to actions. We have the resources to, yes, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but we have the worst resources to collectively work together with the community, with teachers, with parents. And I think that's really what needs to be done to really strengthen and shape and help our children be successful and be educated and show their brilliance ultimately, right? So that's my call to action, that let's work together to do this work.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And when I look at the chat, someone in the chat said, oh, they had to sign off, but she said, Paula Nelson said, thank you, Queens, for sharing your brilliance, your teaching, coaching, leadership, and advocacy. And let me see where that goes. Advocacy and they're powerful and continue to make change for the children in our region. Pleasure to have worked with and learned from you both. So that is so awesome. I'm sitting here with brilliance. Brilliance knows brilliance, right? That's what's going on. And it's not so much about knowing everything and having all this experience. It's exactly what Rhonda said, being a learner. We're always positioning ourselves as a learner, trying to get better in this work, trying to make sure that our world is better, because education really is the key. Like we are, without education, you know, where would we be? But it does need to shift in the way in which we do it. And it does take a village. It takes a community. And so we've got to create what we do. We have to create winning classrooms. The key to creating a winning classroom is to ensure that we are being culturally responsive and understanding what that really means, looks like. And you do not have to be ashamed if you don't really know, because it hasn't really been taught explicitly. And so we are here, everybody educators here, to help you create winning classrooms, winning school climate. Rhonda Threet, Dr. Rhonda Threet is here to help you as well. How can they get a hold of you?
You can email me at Rhonda Threet. That's RHONDA THREET at gmail.com.
Rhonda Threet. You said at gmail.com.
And it starts with the will. Like there's so many resources out there too. Like I always tell people, especially talking about culturally relevant pedagogy, before we go, you have to coin the queen who coined the term culturally relevant pedagogy, Dr. Gloria Lassen Billings. She has an article, it's free, Google, but that's just good teaching. You know, start with that. She gives you 3 criteria for what it means to be culturally relevant. You know, start with that. And that's what I talked about. The one is critical consciousness. You know, that critical consciousness, that's that self for me. That's that self-work. That's why that understanding self and having that interracial dialogue is so important, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're showing up in somebody's class or space and you don't know, but you think you do, that's damaging. So like continuously for me, this is a continual journey. There's no arrival, you know, so just continuously to engage. But I would just definitely say, start with those things, you know, have that will, because like there's not much, like definitely like, you know, we do this work. I do this work in a district, and I'm doing this like, you know, and I do some consulting as well. But I always tell people to start with that, you know, start with that. There's so many free resources out here to educate yourself, but it starts here. You have to have the will. You have to want to do it.
Thank you. And our children need us to have the will.
That part.
Especially our Black and Brown students. We are excited. We don't want to take too much more time.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Threet, for
you.
being here. We are so excited to just have you here. I did put an article from Ed Week in the chat about culturally relevant teaching from Dr. Gloria Latson Billings, an article that was written. So you can check that out. Thank you so much. Yes, someone said it was so, Dania, thank you for staying. And if you need anything, we're here. If you guys need anything, we are here. We are on a mission to make our education system better, and teacher preparation is going to go through to the next level. So we are here to support you, and check us out, everybodyeducate.com. Dr. Threet's information is in here as well. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you so
for
much.
tuning in. Share this with somebody. We're stopping the live stream.